Well, I'm excited, thrilled to have our guest today. One of the great things about being on a plant-based diet, as we are when we follow the Paddison program, is that we're not only looking after ourselves, but we're looking after the planet and we're looking after animals. And so today we have one of the heavyweights with us whose whole family has been involved in this movement for some time. So I'm going to give you a little bit of his background in a sec, but I just want to say, first of all, thank you, Ocean Robbins, for joining us on this podcast episode.
Well, thank you so much. It's funny with the obesity epidemic being what it is, most people don't want to be called a heavyweight. But when it comes to this topic, we also want to be taken seriously. So I'm going to take that as a compliment and think that being called a lightweight would have been an insult. But it's just kind of funny how words mean different things in different contexts.
Yeah, most definitely, most definitely. So, you've got a fantastic publicist, and she has sent me what I consider working as another side job that I've had for nearly 20 years in stand-up comedy and hosting corporate events. It's a fantastic bio. And I like good bios because often mine's being used to be for my introductions and so forth. So I'm going to read out your bio because I think it's very appropriate given how much you and your family have achieved. So folks can sit back and listen to this short bio before we proceed. Ocean Robbins is the author of the newly released book, 31 Day Food Revolution, Heal Your Body, Feel Great, and Transform the World. He serves as CEO and co-founder of the 500,000 plus member Food Revolution Network, one of the largest communities of healthy eating advocates on the planet. Ocean has held hundreds of live seminars and events that have touched millions of lives in 190 nations. His grandfather founded Baskin-Robbins. That's right, the ice cream chain. So we'll get into this in a minute. And his father, John Robbins, walked away from that family company to write bestsellers like Diet for a New America and become a renowned health advocate. And now Ocean is on a mission to transform the industrialized food culture into one that celebrates and supports healthy people and a healthy planet. So Ocean, what's it feel like when I read that out? How do you feel? You must feel just like such a great human being to hear that about yourself when it's read out.
I appreciate it. And, I'm proud of what I've accomplished. And the reason I'm proud of it and what my family has accomplished is because it translates into less people suffering, less tropical rainforests being cut down for cattle grazing, less climate destabilization, more topsoil for future generations, less farmers getting poisoned in the fields because they're working with neurotoxic pesticides, and more human beings who aren't losing their loved ones to heart disease and cancer and type 2 diabetes, more people who have the mobility and the levity they need to dance and run and play because they're not bogged down by excess pounds. So to me, the food revolution is about freedom. It's about vitality, and it's about health for us and for our planet. And the fact that I get to spend my life advocating for a food revolution means I get to help people every single day of my life to be healthier and happier and more satisfied and to build a healthier, happier world. And so, that is a real privilege, Clint. It really is. And I love that you've invited me to join you in this mission and that you are doing so much for so many people. And thanks for bringing me into it with you.
Well, as I said earlier, it's absolute pleasure. And I want it from a personal point of view. And I never realized I'd have the opportunity to tell this story to yourself, but the first book that I ever touched that talked about changing to a plant-based diet was your dad's book, and it came into my hands way before I was ready. And I think there is a reluctance to a lot of folks who are following a Western diet, who enjoy the Western diet, addicted to the Western diet. And I was given the book and I was told, you must read this book. It was from an American girl. She was in her 20s. I was probably similar age, probably late 20s. And I read the book, and it's confronting. Your dad's book, Diet for a New America, big American flag on the front of the copy that I had. And I'm reading it. I'm like, I couldn't quite handle the truths that were in there. And this was the first exposure that I had, and some of our listeners may have read that book. And it was the first time that I was made aware that, or draw to my attention, how much suffering there is for animals. And the message, it took then years later for my own health to decline before I then took the leap that was required. But your dad's been in this movement as a pioneer, and then going back earlier, your grandfather famously started the ice cream chain. So perhaps you could walk us through your version of your family history and how you came to your position as well.
Sure. So as you mentioned, my grandpa, Irvin Robbins, founded an ice cream company, the Baskin-Robbins Company. Back in those days, in the late 40s, there were basically 3 flavors of ice cream. There was chocolate, strawberry, and vanilla. And my grandpa got the idea that there could be a lot more flavors, 31 in fact, one for each day of the month. So he joined with his brother-in-law, Bert Baskin, in launching the ice cream company and kind of inventing franchising in the United States. My dad, John, grew up with an ice cream cone-shaped swimming pool in the backyard and 31 flavors of ice cream in the freezer. He was groomed from early childhood to one day join in running the family company. But when he was in his early 20s, he was offered that chance, and he said no. And he walked away from a path that was practically paved with gold and ice cream to, as we jokingly say in our family, follow his own rocky road. And ended up moving with my mom to a little island off the coast of Canada where they built this one-room log cabin. They grew most of their own food. They lived very simply. They practiced yoga and meditation for several hours a day, and they named their kid Ocean. Of course, That would be me. And then when I got a little older, my dad ended up becoming a best-selling author with the publication of books like Diet for a New America. And he inspired millions of people to look at their food choices as a chance to make a difference in the world. So I grew up, with a family that was obviously up to big things. My grandpa with the ice cream business, and then, my dad with the world-changing business, and then I was inspired by their examples. So at the age of 16, I founded a nonprofit organization called Yes. I traveled the country speaking to school assemblies about the environment and how youth could make a difference in the world, and reached more than 650,000 students. And then I started organizing these transformational events for young leaders. And the thought was, how can we help young people to make a bigger difference on the planet and to take our part as the leaders of the future? So I worked with leaders in over 65 countries over the course of 20 years. And what I saw as I organized for grassroots positive change all over the planet was that everybody eats. And that what we're eating is having this huge effect. And essentially, what my dad's work had been all about with his research and his writings was right on the nose. I saw it with my own eyes that the United States was exporting ways of producing food with pesticides and GMOs and herbicides and fungicides and mass production. We were exporting ways of processing it with white flour and white sugar and chemicals with names we can't pronounce, and also selling it with KFC and McDonald's and Baskin-Robbins, spreading all over the globe. And that as this was happening, all over the planet, waistlines were expanding and hospitals were filling up. People were getting diseases they'd never had before, like heart disease and cancer and type 2 diabetes, which were rare, virtually unheard of a couple generations back. Now they're becoming the primary causes of death in nation after nation, from Japan to China, from Russia, all over the world. And guess where it started? It started in this country. And we're kind of on the front of the curve on this. And we now have obesity rates and overweight rates that are unparalleled, except by Mexico, which is following along very closely. 2/3 of our population is overweight or obese. We have more people in the United States right now per capita that are chronically ill, that are living with miserable, sick, frustrating, painful, debilitating conditions than any population that's ever lived. We spend 19% of our entire gross domestic product on what we call healthcare, which is really disease symptom management. Medical treatment is the leading cause of bankruptcy for individuals, but it's also bankrupting our nation. Medicare is something we literally can't afford if we keep spending like we are on disease symptom management by having so many people sick. Costs of Alzheimer's treatment are expected to triple in the next generation. So who's going to pay for all that? My generation is, right? And so what are we going to do? Well, we got to stem the tide by changing what we eat. So I realized that food was at the center of so much, and it was a place where we could make a huge impact. And so I decided to join forces in 2012 with my dad directly, and we launched Food Revolution Network. We've been working online, organizing people all over the world. I'm the CEO. We now have more than 500,000 members. We've reached millions of people with our mission and our message, and we're just getting started. But, what lights me up every day of my life is the fact that I get to advocate for something that really, truly matters and that helps people. Food's the foundation of health. Unfortunately, it's also become the foundation of disease, but we can turn that around.
Tell us about the Food Revolution Network and how you actually change lives. Tell us how it works.
Absolutely. So Food Revolution Network is an online-based education and advocacy community. And, our goal is healthy, ethical, and sustainable food for everyone who eats. We really bridge the personal and the social and the systemic or political dimensions of food. So we look a lot at health. Got to put your own oxygen mask on first before helping others. But we also need to save the freaking plane, because we're in a situation right now where there are some pretty big, major problems going on in the world. And a lot of them come back to what we eat. Food is fueling climate change, aquifer depletion. It's fueling topsoil erosion. It's creating conditions where deserts are growing, and we may or may not be able to feed humanity in a generation or two because we're on a collision course with collapse of our food production systems because we're being so unsustainable. But the good news is we can turn that around. So Food Revolution Network is standing for a real food revolution in our health, in our bodies, in our relationship with food, and also in how we consume foods that serve a healthier planet for all of us. And we do that through online telesummits, classes, email newsletter, blog article. We have, millions of people visiting our blog at foodrevolution.org every year. And now our newest initiative, the one that I'm most excited about right now, is a new book, 31-Day Food Revolution, which I've just released. And I'm so excited about it. The subtitle is Heal Your Body, Feel Great, and Transform Your World. And I really captured our message and I'm putting it into simple, actionable steps you can take every day to get the results you want.
I love how you've tied in the 31-day link with the 31 flavors from that wasn't missed on me.
Oh, you noticed that,
I noticed that one, yeah. And what I also find impressive after looking at the 31-Day Food Revolution website is the endorsements. I mean, you've got some endorsements from very, very prominent people in the world, not just in the plant-based world like Dean Ornish, and Dr. Greger and so forth, but from Paul McCartney. I mean, you must, the opportunity to reach a large audience is obviously there with this book. But can you tell us, when did it launch? Where can people get it? And then we'll go into details about why did you write it and so forth. Yeah, give us a short promotion about the book.
Absolutely. Well, so the book it came out February 5th, and it's about really how you can put this into action. At the end of the day, cancer doesn't care a heck of a lot how much you know or how many podcasts you listen to or how many books you read. No offense to either of us, Clint, but at the end of the day, cancer does care what you eat and how you live. Yeah. So do heart disease and arthritis and all of the other major ailments and challenges that we're facing right now. And so my goal is to help people get relief and to help people put what we know into action. I think a lot of what we face isn't a crisis of not knowing what to do. It's not doing what we know. If all that was needed was for people to know we need to eat more vegetables, we need to eat less sugar and processed junk, we wouldn't have an obesity epidemic in America. But unfortunately, just knowing it isn't enough. So I've been a student of looking at what does it take to turn knowledge into action so you get real results. And my book combines knowledge with action. Every single chapter ends with simple action steps you can take to put it into practice. There are 31 chapters because, of course, at the end of the day, 31 steps to health will give you more satisfaction and more joy even than 31 flavors of ice cream. And I divided the book into 4 parts. And part 1 is detoxify. And that's where we really look at how you can simply and easily rid your body, your health, your kitchen, your life of toxins, some of which you may not even know are there that could be making you sick. And part 2 is nourish. And that's where we look at how you can really saturate your body with the wonderful micronutrients and macronutrients that help you thrive. We look at the best foods for fighting cancer and dementia and inflammation and heart disease, and how you can bring all that down and bring your joy in your life up. And then part 3 is gather. That's where we look at the social side of food. A lot of us think that we're lone wolves. Most diet books out there treat it like you can just change your diet all by yourself. But guess what? We're connected to food with a lot of other people. We share meals, whether or not in households and at work and family gatherings and all kinds of events and places. So when you get the social side supporting you instead of fighting against you, then it actually helps you to stay on your path. And the key is learning how to navigate tricky social dynamics so everyone wins and everyone feels respected and loved. You don't all have to agree, but you can all agree that everyone should feel respected in their food choices and values. And then we also look at how you can be a positive influence on people you love without feeling like you're shoving an ideology down their throats. And then in part 4, transform, the focus is on how food can be a tool of positive change. The food revolution is one you can fight with your knife and your fork. And this revolution has no losers. Everyone wins. You win, your community wins, your family wins, your whole planet wins. So we look at the global impact and the political impact and at how food can be a way to make a difference on this planet that we love. And I'm going to suggest that everybody listening right now, I'm sure you care about the world we live in. And a lot of us have become cynical because it can feel like the problems we're facing are so freaking overwhelming that it's easy to lose hope. But what I'm saying is that when you actually know you can do something, you do. If there was somebody you loved who was suffering and you knew that a simple action you could take would make a huge difference in their life, I'll bet you would do it if you really knew it mattered. But yet we become cynical because we're sick of greenwashing, of people lying to us and telling us that something matters, and it turns out it was an empty promise. Politicians that secure our votes with empty promises, and at the end of the day, they don't deliver. And a lot of us deal with this and we get cynical. But I'm saying that when it comes to food, you have immense power to make an impact in a positive, constructive way. And the spoiler alert is it's a heck of a lot easier to change your world than you ever imagined. I'll show you how.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, that's writing a book like this with the objective to cover so much like you have is a big task. Okay, so other people may have felt that they have tackled everything at once, which it sounds like your book does, right? So you've got the challenge of people finding it hard to transition to a plant-based diet, not knowing if they can. And so what do you think, what problems mostly do you think the book solves for folks?
Oh, well, it solves confusion about what's healthy and what's not, because I'm not trying to push an ideology. I'm trying to help you get healthy and get the results you want. And so I look at what the medical research actually says, pulling from more than 400 scientific journals that are peer-reviewed in the course of the book. I've spent a lot of time researching, and you don't have to. You can just get the distilled wisdom. Yeah. But we actually have thousands of medical studies that all point in the same direction. Medical science is not nearly as confused as most of us think about what human beings actually need to eat if we want to get results and get healthy. So I share that. I break it down and I make it simple and easy and accessible. And this isn't about some fundamentalist ideology. It's about basic science and how you put it into practice if you actually want to be healthy. And then I also solve the problem of apathy and lethargy by giving simple, bite-sized steps you can take to get momentum, to get results, and to keep on going. And in fact, not only is there one action step for every chapter, there are actually 3, because I want to meet people where they are. So some people are more advanced, some people are more early on the path. Wherever you are, I welcome you. This is a big tent approach. And one of the other beautiful things I think about the food revolution is there's room for everybody in this revolution. So if you're a mainstream kind of eater who's struggling to give up, Twinkies, welcome to the club. There's room for you here, and let's help you make some progress so you can get the results you want. And if you're like a long-term hardcore vegan who's trying to figure out whether or not a teaspoon of honey is okay in your green tea, welcome to the club. I'll help you solve that one, because you can always take more steps. And I'll bet you, if you're in that position, that you probably have some friends and loved ones who don't eat quite the way you do. Yes. And maybe there's a bit of tension around that, and I'll help you navigate that. Now, so wherever you are, I welcome you. Let's move forward together. Let's get informed, and let's make some progress, and let's take some action.
Yeah. The latter is where our audience is more at. We've got a lot of people who have been following a plant-based diet for a long period of time. They've got all the nuances down, and their questions are more like the teaspoon of honey style. So that's going to be very helpful. I've brought up the website page here, and I'm just looking at part 2, Nourish, which you mentioned before as you walk through each of the 4 parts. You talk about heal your gut. Now, this is a big focus of what we do when we're attempting to reduce inflammation and get well from tricky, very difficult diseases like autoimmune diseases. a couple of things we advocate for healing the gut, and I'd like to get your input on this and maybe some other ideas. Talk a lot about leafy greens, just leafy greens to feed the gut bacteria, and focusing on easy to digest foods, things like quinoa and buckwheat that are alkalizing and so forth. Any other ideas around this that you've found suitable for your book?
Well, so the two main things that you need to understand if you want to heal your gut are prebiotics and probiotics. So probiotics are more well known. They're the good bacteria that that digest your food and that produce the neurotransmitters that give your brain the nourishment it needs to be happy and well. They say the gut's like your second brain, and it really is. And when we think about trusting our gut, well, that's more than just a concept. There's actual science behind it. Your gut has incredible wisdom, and a lot of that wisdom isn't actually yours. It's your bacteria.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
You have a couple pounds of bacteria in your digestive tract, and they have more DNA by far than you do. And they are what kind of makes your world go round way more than you recognize. So you want to obviously feed the good guys, and that's where prebiotics come in, because it's actually really hard when you're taking probiotics to have them make it all the way down to the lower intestine where they do their magic. A lot of them die because your stomach is like a pH of 3 or something. So it's very acidic, and it's actually designed to kill critters, right? So they don't tend to make it down very easily. Some do. And probiotics can be helpful, but prebiotics are kind of where it's at, because that's where you feed the good guys who are already there and help the ones that make it there prosper. And what they love to eat is fiber. There are a lot of different kinds of fiber. The average American gets less than half the recommended daily allowance for fiber. We get about 15 grams a day. The recommended amount is about 30, but our Paleolithic ancestors got about 100. So it could be that we should be getting, 5, 6, 8 times more than we are right now. And I'll tell you where fiber is. It's in whole plant foods. It's not in animal products. There is absolutely zero fiber in any meat, dairy, eggs, fish. None of them have any fiber whatsoever. So if you want to get more fiber, it's whole plant food. There's also no fiber in bottled oils. There's very little in white flour. There's very little in sugar. But there's a lot in vegetables. There's a lot in legumes. And there's actually quite a bit in whole grains. So from a fiber standpoint, these are your friend. And less than 5% of the U.S. population gets the recommended amount. But you can be in that 5%, and you can even go beyond that, and you'll get tremendous benefits, because the fiber is what the good bacteria love. Now, there are certain kinds of fiber that are extra yummy for them. They're treats. And if you really want to feed the good guys, then give them the treats. So that's where some of my favorites, jicama is incredibly high and wonderful fiber, and also Jerusalem artichokes.
Jerusalem artichokes. Thank
you.
Sorry, what was the one prior to that? I'd never heard that before.
Jicama. So jicama is a white colored tuber that it grows underground, and it tastes kind of like an apple, but a little less sweet. And it's a vegetable, but it's great in salads. And some people just like to chop it up and eat it, in slivers or slices. You can even chop it really thin and make a wrap with it, because it kind of holds together and it can wrap around stuff. But jicama is a really amazingly underappreciated superfood when it comes to feeding the good bacteria in your gut. And then, bananas have some good, wonderful nourishment for the good bacteria.
Resistant starch, right?
Yeah. Those are a few of my favorites. Acacia gum, baobab. These are things we don't eat very much of.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes people get them in powders if you're looking for some prebiotic powders, and it's not a bad supplement to take. Honestly, if you had to choose between taking a prebiotic supplement and a probiotic, I'd probably go with the prebiotic, because that's really how you feed the good guys. And the truth is, right now you've got them. You just may not have enough of them. Now, let me add to that you also don't want to feed the bad guys. So there are some bacteria that we know are bad, like E. coli or salmonella. But there are other bacteria that are kind of bad that you probably don't want in your stomach either. And guess what they love? They love sugar. Very interesting. They love sugar. They love processed junk. And when you eat that stuff, you actually are populating your digestive tract with bacteria that like to eat that. Now, they're going to actually send signals to your body to say they're hungry and they want more. So if you feed the good guys, they're going to make you crave good foods. But if you feed the bad guys, they're going to make you crave bad foods. So this is one, I think, vastly under-recognized element of the science of food addiction, is that there are a lot of elements to it, of course, but one of them is that there are bacteria in your gut that actually get addicted to junk food and make you think that you want it because they do.
Yeah, most definitely. So if we just overly generalize this, well, we'd say that sugar is the predominant source for feeding the bad guys. Would you go so far to say that? Or could we also include fats? Or I mean, what else perhaps?
I think sugar feeds the bad guys, and I think animal products are a wasted opportunity because they don't provide any fiber for the good guys.
Right. Nice.
I don't think they literally feed the bad guys, but you know. So, but what you really want to do is not just get rid of the bad stuff, but actually say yes to the good stuff. And I'm really interested in crowding out the bad with the good.
Yes.
So it's not about depriving yourself. A lot of people take away the donuts and the Coke and the steak and whatever else, and then they look at their plate and all they've got is a little side of plain mashed potatoes and some peas or something, and they're like, what am I going to eat, right? No, you want to fill your plate with all kinds of wonderful foods and base your diet around that, and then you get the results. At the end of the day, an ice cream cone's not going to kill anybody. Neither is a donut once in a blue moon. It's what you do day in and day out that matters the most. But some of us like to draw bright lines because we can't trust ourselves to eat a little bit of something. Bet you can't eat just one isn't just a catchy marketing slogan. It's actually a threat. And unfortunately, one that the company delivers on. There are a lot of foods out there that people can't eat just one of because they've been scientifically designed to manipulate our taste buds and our brains to crave them and want more and get addicted to them and to not know when we're full. So you got to stay away from that stuff. There are 1,400 chemicals in the modern diet that are added by the processed food industry. Additives, flavorings, colorings, all this stuff, emulsifiers, and they're all added to our food. Most of them have never been tested for their real long-term impact on human beings. And now we wonder why we've got an obesity epidemic. Well, our food has become food-like products, and it's toxic, and it's killing us. So that's why it's time to make a change. Now, a lot of people listening might say, oh, I don't eat that stuff. I don't go to McDonald's. I don't drink Coke. I'm way ahead of that. So let me say that the toxic food culture makes it seem, because normal is so bad for a lot of us, it makes it seem like you can be doing way better than the other folks around you and still not be in a place that's optimal. Yeah. And so I think part of the food revolution is lovingly and gently starting where you are and then moving towards where you really want to be. And most of us could eat a lot more vegetables than we are. Let me just make this really clear. You could eat 5 times the average American's helping of vegetables and be nowhere near what's best because the average American doesn't get hardly any. So, I think you could eat a couple pounds of vegetables a day and still get more. They're that good for you. I mean, the science is just absolutely overwhelming. So all kinds of vegetables. Obviously, we hear about kale a lot, but you can even go with cabbage. I mean, cabbage isn't that expensive. Find ways to love it and enjoy it. Learn to love foods that love you back, and your body will thank you for the rest of your life.
I once did a glass of cabbage juice through the juicer and nearly vomited. So that was that stuff going.
Don't recommend that.
No.
At least that's not for the faint of heart.
If you can drink a glass of pure cabbage juice, your microbiome has adjusted in a very, very aggressive manner to be able to handle that.
Cabbage is one of those things that gets sweeter when it gets cooked.
Right.
Coleslaw. I mean, you can enjoy that, but it's got a nice crunch to it. Yes. But some foods, onions are another one. They just totally change when they're cooked.
Yes.
And it's why, I love raw foods and there's a lot of benefits to it. But sometimes we can eat more of things when they're cooked because they're softer and they get sweeter and more palatable. So obviously you have to find what works for you. But I think a whole mixture of raw and cooked is optimal.
That's exactly my conclusion after doing 8 months with raw foods and finding that I got tremendous pain relief, but I was unable to sustain my weight, even eating more than my daily required intake of nuts and seeds that were being soaked and activated. And it was, it had great benefits, but then when I was able to add some more cooked foods back in, then my body found further healing path after that. But people know my story. We want to know more about yours. Getting back to the book, we talked about healing the gut in part 2. Chapter or part number 12 within part 2 is how to love eating vegetables. So let's continue down this vegetable path. Can you give us a couple of ideas from the book about how we can love our vegetables more.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, let me say, this is one of the challenges a lot of people face is, we think about all the kids who are told you can have your dessert after you eat your vegetables, and they scrunkle their face and they fight their way through it, and they maybe even try to hide it in their lap, because it becomes a chore, right? And a lot of us feel that way, and we may grit our teeth and do it or not. But at the end of the day, you're probably not going to persevere with something if you don't learn to enjoy it, because most of us want to enjoy our lives, and it's a whole lot easier to live them abundantly if what we surround ourselves with is enjoyable as well as good for us. So how do you make eating vegetables enjoyable? Well, one thing you can do is add them to all kinds of things. You can try making them a centerpiece rather than a side dish. So, making, spaghetti, and then you use the zucchini pasta, or try making a wonderful curry sauce and then putting it over veggies and look at your potato or your sweet potato or your quinoa or your legumes as a side, and put vegetables in the center of your plate. Make sauces you love. Use spices. Spices are so underappreciated for their culinary value. I mean, around the world, they're not. Around the world, in most countries, spices are the centerpiece of what makes cultural cuisine what it is. But in the US, in the UK, in Australia, and a lot of the so-called civilized, developed world, that's how we think of ourselves, we have completely lost touch with the power of spices. We use salt and sugar and fat to flavor our foods. Well, we're missing out on so much fun. I mean, there's nothing wrong with salt, sugar, or fat inherently, but when they become how you add flavor, and you miss out on the incredible savory and sweet and pungent flavors that are available from spices, you're missing so much fun. So spices also have incredible healing value, and they're a great thing. Make friends with your spice rack, with your sauces and curries, and add them to veggies, and you get a whole new flavor in the mix. Learn to also cross the savory and sweet lines up. We're finding we can use pineapple in all kinds of savory dishes. We can add spices, even like allspice or nutmeg or cinnamon sometimes to a savory dish. And then for that matter, trying some chili in a sweet dish, chili chocolate. I mean, we're finding that sometimes these lines get crossed and the food gets a whole lot more interesting. As far as vegetables specifically, with kids, it's nice to chop them in funny shapes and make little cutouts. Having them on hand when hunger strikes is important. We had a time a little while back when we were noticing as we were making dinner, our kids were getting snacky, and they were rummaging through the cupboards, finding whatever they could grab, and they were filling up on that. And then we'd make dinner and put it on the table, and they're like, sorry, we're full. So what we started doing was we'd steam a nice little pot of veggies and put it on the table, along with maybe a hummus or some kind of a dipping sauce. Sometimes we just put out, carrots or celery and some peanut butter, whatever it was. We get some healthy stuff out there on the table. And if they want to fill up, let them fill up on veggies. And our kids have literally devoured an entire head of cabbage before dinner.
Wow.
And then they sit down, and if they're full, it's like, no problem, kids. You're doing great. So the same is true for us. If your snacks comprise about a quarter of our calories, typically.
Wow. Yeah.
They're like another meal, about 600 calories a day for the average American. And most of those snacks are some of the worst foods. Right. They tend to be highly processed, things you can grab and go that have come out of a package. So if you can plan ahead, snack on your hummus with carrots and celery, snack on your peanut butter logs and celery, snack on, some steamed kale or veggies. And that's a snack you don't have to feel guilty about. Yeah. And if you get the munchies late at night, go for it. Not that long ago, our son River he got the munchies. He'd already brushed his teeth. And he's snacking on, cabbage, steamed cabbage. And I'm thinking his dentist might not approve, but this is kind of cool. It sure beats late night donut binges, So when you actually surround yourself with healthy foods, then they become the path of least resistance because that's what's there. Yeah. And a lot of the key is stocking the right things and having the right things on hand. And frankly, having them ready to go when you need them. Because most of us, if you're like me, you get busy and you don't want to stop and spend 45 minutes in the kitchen in the middle of your busy day or before you go off to work first thing in the morning. So planning ahead, cooking in quantity is really helpful. And then finding the ways that work for you. You can also add veggies to everything from smoothies to pasta sauces to lasagna. Just keep sticking them in there, even with other foods. It's amazing how it all adds up, and you can wind up just learning to love veggies more and more and more, your taste buds will change. That's the other thing I want to say. They really do evolve. They have a pretty high amount of turnover every 2 weeks. So even in just as little as a couple of weeks, they can literally change what things taste like and how they feel, and new habits get formed. If it rains, the water flows into the point of lowest land area, and it'll go into grooves, and eventually they become gullies, and eventually creeks, and eventually rivers. Mm-hmm. And what we all know is that those pathways tend to be pretty consistent from winter to winter. Well, I live in California, so it rains in the winter here. But from rainstorm to rainstorm, the water will go where it usually does, and those grooves get deeper. So my point is that habits are kind of like that. And when you use your willpower to create new habits, then your path of least resistance becomes the healthy one. Yeah. And that's the right use of willpower, not to fight in the middle of a rainstorm to push the water to go in the right place. But when it's sunny, when it's clear, go out there in your field and find the spot that the water goes and create the groove you want. And then that's where it'll go the next time it rains.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. Now, I have a question for you. This is relevant to part 3 in your gather. You have a number 21 of the 31 different sections is eat well when you go out. Now, what we find with inflammatory arthritis is that oils, vegetable oils, really tend to stir up inflammation in the body. I'd just like to get your own sort of thoughts regarding whether you've observed that yourself with people you've worked with, talked to, spoken with, had questions at seminars, whatever. And also whether or not you mention this in your book, and whether or not oils are something that Ocean Robbins considers okay or not.
I'm not a big fan of bottled oils. I'm not a big fan of processed anything. I think there's a place for processing now and then. A little bit of it's not going to kill you, most likely. I mean, there are conditions where it actually could, but in most cases, for most people, most of the time, it's all about the dose determines the poison, and right. Moderation of anything can generally be survived. Maybe not dioxin, but most things. However, they're not good for you. They're a processed food. What we've done is we've taken a whole food, whether it's rapeseed or soybean or corn or sunflower seeds, or olives, and we've stripped away the fiber and a lot of the vitamins and minerals, and we've just pulled out the oil, which is not unlike what happens when you create processed sugar or refined flour. You strip away a bunch of a food and you're left with just a piece of it, and then we use that for various purposes. So inherently, there's kind of a problem with the oil concept, unless you're using it as a supplement. Now, there are some supplements that can be helpful. In general, I think we should get nutrients from food. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of data telling us that most of us do better with some vitamin B12. 25% of the American public, not just vegans, are deficient in B12. Mm-hmm. And there's also issues with vitamin D3. We're finding that vitamin D is something that most of us don't get enough of. We're not in the sun nearly as much as our ancestors were, and we're paying a terrible price for that. So those are a couple supplements I highly recommend. And then omega-3 fatty acids are another, which brings us back to the oil piece, because DHA and EPA in particular are two of the omega-3 fatty acids that you can't get from plant foods, except algae. And most of us don't eat a heck of a lot of algae. So if you're interested in getting EPA and DHA, you either need to incorporate some fish into your diet, or you need to supplement with some algae-sourced EPA and DHA, and that's an oil. You can also take some flax oil or incorporate flax seeds and chia seeds, better yet, into your diet, ideally ground up to be able to really absorb them. And that can be good for fighting inflammation too, by the way. Omega-3s are strong inflammation fighters. But at the end of the day, there's a place for that. But it's a supplement. You don't want to base your diet around it. And some people who are trying to avoid oils altogether, eating out can be tricky, because restaurants are catering to a public that's used to certain tastes and cuisines. And frankly, we live in a society that is overwhelmed. It's practically swimming in oil and salt and sugar. And so depending on, how far you want to go and what your particular dietary pattern is, eating out can be more or less difficult. Some of the top tips are you can actually search online for healthy restaurants in a specific area, and you may be surprised to find some you didn't even know about that advertise themselves that way. Obviously, just because somebody appears on that list doesn't mean they are healthy, but it may be. Or if you're vegetarian or vegan, go ahead and put that in there. And you'll find that when they created their website, if they took the time to say healthy or vegan or vegetarian, then at least they want to cater to that audience. So it's a certain filter, right? And then check out their menus online. See what's there. You can do a little advanced research so you don't wind up in a place that can't accommodate your needs. Or when you walk in, ask for the menu first thing. If you're going out with friends or loved ones and they're going to a place that doesn't have anything on the menu that you would typically want to eat, you can decide, are you willing to compromise or not? But you can also order what I call off the menu, which is to say you can make special requests with all the ingredients that they already have. And many restaurants want to accommodate you. I was in a hotel not too long ago, and they didn't have anything I could eat, but I really wanted to hang out with my friends. So I asked them to combine a kind of unique mix, and I ended up with a sweet potato and a curry sauce from another dish they had, and a bunch of chili, and then I had some different spices, and then I got a side of like 3 different sides of vegetables, and I had a feast. It wasn't the height of gourmet cuisine, but it definitely worked. None of what I ate was actually on the menu per se.
Yeah.
But they had all the ingredients and they were happy to accommodate. They were a little confused how to bill me, but we worked it out and everyone wanted something that was fair. And, you can do that. They are in the business of serving you. And I'll tell you what, if enough people make requests like that, I'll bet you before long, a restaurant like that's going to serve sweet potatoes with curry sauce on the menu. Because you know what? That's how the world changes. When I was a kid, restaurants didn't even know what vegetarian was. They were like, oh, we got the chicken over here, And nowadays they do. And they often even have vegetarian menus or sections of the menu. And this is becoming common. And it all started because people asked. So same thing. If you're oil-free, ask for it. Let them know what your needs are. And a lot of them can accommodate. If they don't have a chef that it can accommodate, then I am guessing that they're probably not on the leading edge of healthy food. Yeah. And that's a place you can go once in a while, but it's probably not what you want to depend on for your health.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's some great ideas there regarding to picking from different food items on the menu and being able to say, well, look, you already have that. Let's combine that and that and that. I've never quite gone that far, but that's a level of creativity that I'm going to apply next time as well. So I know we're coming up to our time. You've been generous with your time with us. I'd like you to, before we just direct people to where they can get a copy of your book, how do you see the future of this plant-based movement going? Certainly, I've seen a massive shift, as you just alluded to, with restaurants catering more towards plant-based eaters, certainly vegetarians. Where do you see, as a family, with you yourself and your dad, and I'm sure your children going forward as next generation, do you see a future in which most human beings are eating a plant-based diet?
Well, I mean, it is remarkable how fast plant-based eating is spreading. The number of Americans who identify as vegan has increased 4-fold in the last 4 years. I'm not kidding. I mean, that's a major change. Yeah. The number of Germans who are eating a no or low meat diet has increased from 22% to over 40% in the last few years.
It's amazing.
The number of Brits who are going plant-based has doubled in the last few years. So all over the world, we're seeing a radical shift. Now, does that mean that it's going to become normal to be vegan? I'd be a little surprised, to be honest with you. It could be. But I think that the acceptability of being plant-based, of deriving most of our calories from whole plant foods, that's growing fast. And I don't think that's going anywhere anytime soon. If you look at the blue zones, the places in the world where people live the longest, healthiest lives, this has been documented by Dan Buettner for National Geographic. We see that generally the people in those regions, I mean, they're very varied in their diets and their life patterns, but they all get a lot of exercise. They all have strong family bonds. They all have stress reduction tools and methods built into their lives, and they all eat a predominantly whole foods, plant-based diet. They of the 5 official blue zones, 4 of them are not vegetarian or vegan per se, but they get between 5 and 10% of their calories from animal products, and one actually is tending towards vegetarian or vegan. That's Loma Linda, California. And but they're all, 5 or 10% or 0% is a far cry from 34%, which is what we average in the United States. The average American gets 34% of calories from animal products and about 50% from processed foods and animal products. So what's left is, 16% or so from whole plant foods. And we need to flip that on its head. If we get 85% from whole plant foods, we're doing pretty darn good. Some people want to go to 100%. At the end of the day, what matters is the direction we move. And whether you go sort of all the way or most of the way is up to a lot of different factors. Your personal choice, your life context, your health history and reality, your environment, your stage of life, what resources you have, financial and otherwise.
Sure.
But I think that at the end of the day, the direction most of us need to move is super clear. And I think a lot of us are. We're sick and tired of being sick and tired. We're hungry for a change. We're fed up with toxic food, and we're making a difference with our own lives and in the culture. And this is a part that I think is actually really exciting. Every single person who chooses to take a stand for healthier food is actually a leader. Because to be a leader is to do something different than the norm for reasons of conscience or intentionality or purpose. And that naturally creates a gravitational pull away from the norm and towards a new possibility. People feel the conviction, they feel the purpose, they feel the values, and they frankly see your health and they want to be more like you. So that's how we get momentum in this food revolution. And the food industry, which has made billions, it's made a killing off of making us sick, is starting to get with the program. More and more food companies are realizing that they've lost the trust of the consumer, and that if they just focus on selling processed junk and trying to make it as tasty and appealing and fattening as possible, they are going to kill their customers and they're going to lose their business. And so more and more of these companies are starting to slowly look at how they can make changes, partly for marketing and PR reasons, partly because they actually genuinely want to do the right thing. And I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. But I think we're going to see more and more food companies reducing their ingredients, reducing the amount of toxins, reducing the amount of sugar. It's more and more organic, natural, non-GMO, whole food offerings on in supermarkets, in restaurants, and in our kitchens.
Yeah, absolutely. It is exciting. And, I was reading about reports about, meat and dairy industries investing their own money into plant-based alternatives. So there's this cross-pollination or covering all bases from those industries as they see those plant-based product lines on the rise. So, they know what's up. They know things are shifting. They can see which direction the money's going, and they don't want to miss out on that as well. Look, there's so much we could talk about. There's so many other things I want to chat with you about, but people can get a ton more from you from your fantastic book, 31-Day Food Revolution by Ocean Robbins. You can get it by going to that name, 31-Day Food Revolution, which is 31 the number, dayfoodrevolution.com online. And also join the Food Revolution group. Go across to Food Revolution and be able to get those information products, emails and so forth, and online training regarding how to eat healthier and as a result, improve not just your own life, but save the planet, let's face it. And with endorsements that you have, from Paul McCartney and so many other prominent others like Tony Robbins, obviously no relation, but we're talking Anthony Robbins, the coach, and so many others. Go and check it out. This is a fantastic book that I'm waiting on my copy. Your publicist sent me a copy in the mail, so I'm waiting on it didn't quite arrive before our interview, but I'm very excited to read it. And I want to thank you for coming on and sharing what you've shared with us today. And also from a personal viewpoint, having such fantastic speakers such as yourself, such pioneers in this field, to be in our court and on our team and helping to shape the way that people think about food and what it's doing to their bodies and how it can impact so many things other than just themselves. It's really great to have you out there doing what you're doing, writing books like this, and hopefully we can meet in person one day at an event or something. And I'd really enjoy that. So thanks very much for coming on the episode.
Me too. Thank you so much, Clint. And to everybody who's listening, thank you for caring. Thank you for investing your most precious resource, which is your time and attention, in learning. Food can be medicine. It can be healing. It can be medicine for you, and it can also be medicine for our society and our planet. So thank you for learning and engaging, and for your partnership in this food revolution. Let's do this. And if my book, 31 Day Food Revolution, can support you on your path, I am thrilled. That's why I wrote it. So go ahead and check it out. You can also get it from your local bookstore. And thank you for your partnership in this revolution, because we are just getting started, but we're going to do some big things together. I know it. And thank you so much, Clint.
Awesome. Thanks, Ocean.